So welcome to another POFcast. I'm Rob Lancaster.
I am Minagano-GPAA.
I'm David Vincent.
And Stephen Bay.
Very good. Welcome, everyone. It's been a while since we've last connected for a POFcast, and it's a while since we've done one scattered across the globe, partly in Juba, partly in Boer, partly in Melbourne today. And we're going to be discussing the initiative for an inter-communal boarding school in Jonglei-GPAA. So we'll come to that in a moment. And Stephen's with us particularly to discuss that initiative as he's kind of leading the coordination of it. But first, as always, let's share some reflections on peace from recent memory. Minagano, you're always ready with a deep thought that you've considered for many hours beforehand. So over to you.
This particular one, I've considered it many days before. So when I was thinking about the Inter-Communal Boarding School, an encounter came to mind when I visited Beach for the first time. There was a young boy who is a student, and he wanted to go to school back in Bibor. He's studying in Bibor, but he's originally from Beach, which is a lot of kilometers away from Bibor. So he had two options, whether to work for days so that he can be able to go back to school after holidays, or to wait for the opportunity that the center have created with partners coming in and going back to Bibor. If there's a car going back to Bibor, then he can join and go with the team back to be able to go back to school. And I also think it's not an easy one, because some of the humanitarian institutions that go there, they have regulations with regards to who they can take in the car and who they cannot take in the car and stuff like that. So this young boy at a very tender age, he's already learning how to negotiate his ways into being accepted into certain spaces, which I think is great on one hand, but also it's such an unfortunate scene that there's no school at all in places like Beach, and people have to, if you really want to pursue education, you have to work for more than a day to be able to access school. So I've been thinking about that young boy.
Thanks. Stephen.
When I'm thinking about the Inter-Communal Boarding School, I'm thinking of, there's one particular activity that I imagine that the children at the school will enjoy to, to do it together, and that is sports. Sports is one of those activities that brings people together. So yesterday, during the independence in Bor, there was a local football match that was well attended, and you could see how it brought many people together, irrespective of their tribes. Even I'm sure even some gang members who are disturbing people here in Bor came to watch it because of the interest and the passion for football. Yeah.
David.
I haven't thought of any, but I think for me, this week I'm in Melbourne. Between Melbourne and Sydney. So I was driving, drove from Sydney to Melbourne, and then there was that calmness. The roads, obviously, the roads are really very nice, nice to drive on. You can enjoy actually the long drive and the peace. And so during that long drive for me, really, it was just so good just to be enjoying that sort of drive without fear. Everyone is really obeying the road rules, and you could see the cars just moving past. And so for me, there was just that calmness that came to me as I was driving.
Very good. Mine, I don't know if it's directly related to peace or more of a general thing of which peace is apart, but with the World Cup going on at the moment, it's moved on since Cabo Verde were eliminated, but often when we talk about South Sudan, people talk about the logical kind of mathematical type equation of development, and that saying, oh well, it needs to take 50 years or 60 years or 70 years. Well, by that sort of mathematical logic, Cabo Verde should never even have come close to beating Argentina in the World Cup. So there's always outliers, and so I sort of wonder, in what ways could South Sudan change its narrative to be an outlier rather than having to take another 50 or 100 years to compete in the World Cup of peace progress. So let's see, it's now getting to the stage where it's all the usual suspects apart from one or two left. So we'll see what happens. Let's move into the topic for today on the Inter-Communal Boarding School for Jonglei and GPAA. And as I said at the top, Stephen is joining us particularly for this, but wondered whether we could start with you, David, just to share a little bit about the genesis of the idea and how it arose back with the Pieri conference and the process since then.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I think for me, I have it's one of those little pieces of work that for quite some time it had been sitting at the back of my mind as one thing that if we are able to achieve would be. But perhaps we step back a little bit to try to see how this came about. As you mentioned, Rob, the Pieri piece agreement, lots of agreement. One piece or one part of the agreement or the resolution was for the three communities, the desire for them to have an intercommunal boarding school at a location that all of them would agree that the school would be built. And so for quite some time, that particular resolution sat there. We didn't do much about it. But then as we continued, then that conversation or that agenda of the intercommunal boarding school was brought into the intercommunal governance structures meeting, the ICGS meeting, and that was explored a little bit more and the possibilities of it being achieved. And for me, I think it was quite interesting how it was one item that everybody was quite eager and quite interested to get it going. But if you look at it, it's a dream that has started way back with the Pieri Peace Agreement until where we are. And then we now saw, as you mentioned, we now saw Stephen coming on board to kind of lead the process towards it.
And how would you describe the significance of it? Because in a sense, boarding schools are not a particularly innovative concept, and in fact, some people don't like the concept of boarding schools sending kids off to away from community and family to be educated. But in this context, what's the significance of this idea in terms of the wider relationships between the communities and this peace process?
Yeah, so these are the three communities: the Nuer, the Dinka, and the Murle. These are the communities for over, I would say, over 100 years they've been in conflict together, and that conflict sort of changes dynamics every time and then, and every decade. I think there are different approach. People sort of approach it and try to resolve that conflict, and that conflict has never gone away. And so the relationship between these three communities is quite hostile, I could say. But for the last 6-7 years now, I think, yes, we haven't really reached the point where there is like a complete peace, but the relative calmness that is attached to the process of what we are leading actually is just quite incredible. And we are also looking at how can this deep rooted hatred between the three communities, how can we break that circle? And that cycle, we want to see how it can be broken. I think when they spoke about the importance of the next, how can we cultivate peace and harmony within the next generation of leaders, and this school, the dream of having this school actually will go deep to try to address that, where children from these three communities are able to learn together, play together, dance together, and are able to create their own identity that is born out of the three communities. I think that's how significant it is. And now I was just thinking, I don't know how I can equate it or I can compare it to, if you look at Palestine and Israel. Imagine Palestine and Israel having a school that the two communities go in together. For me, we haven't yet got there, but once we are able to achieve this dream and the school itself is built, I think it will be quite incredible. It will be very significant to these communities.
Yeah. And when I think about the significance of this school, a story comes to mind. When I was having a conversation with the Bridges of Peace women at the initial stage of the training process, I remember one lady from the Nuer community said, oh, she has never even in her life seen a Murle person. So she said in her village, if you want to scare people, you can just even point at the tree and say that is a Murle and children will get scared. So I think that also speaks to how the relationship between these three communities are shaped by a lot of stereotypes and really not knowing what the other community is all about. It's mainly shaped by the negative things. So I think what this school can do is really bring into the picture, because we're not saying they're not bad things about these three communities that they have done to each other, but there's rich culture. There are very good things about all these three communities. So the school really will give an opportunity for them to get to learn the other side of the story and take it back to their communities. And perhaps that's the more faster way to challenge those stereotypes and the negative narratives within their communities.
And so, Stephen, this brings us to you neatly. So we had this idea of the Inter-Communal Boarding School just literally as I think a sentence or two in the Pieri agreement 6 years ago, and then now the process of bringing it to fruition. So perhaps could you start by just giving us a summary of what this has involved, the process so far, to try and give shape and color to this idea that was in a very broad sense to begin with?
Well, thank you. To start off, we have eight member committees representing the three communities of the Murle, the Nuer, and the Dinkas of Jonglei and GPAA. And I am also one of the coordinators who is ensuring that the idea of the implementation of the Inter-Communal Boarding School is realized by the three communities. So what we have done so far is we've conducted awareness raising, because we thought that for this idea to materialize, we need to garner more support from the community members of the three communities, and also to mobilize for the local materials. So far we have done we have carried out 4 consultations, 2 in GPAA, one in Tibor, and the other one in Lekwangone. And in Jonglei State, we have carried out a consultation in Bor with key stakeholders. When I talk of key stakeholders, I mean the government, the youth leaders, the church, the women representatives, and other key sectors. And so far, what we've the response that we have obtained from these consultations is that the communities are in agreement with the idea, and there are also some community members who have come forward to say that this is what we are going to contribute for the achievement of the intercommunal boarding school. Like, for example, a woman in Lekwangone, in one of the consultations, decided to offer a bag of charcoal as a contribution. So these collection and pledges of the resources from the community members are ongoing. Thank you very much.
And in the process so far, Stephen, as you've engaged with these different groups, what have you found to be most encouraging in what you've heard people saying and the way they've reacted to the idea?
So what is encouraging is that, during the consultations, there are two things that we are achieving. One, we are carrying out wider awareness, but at the same time, we are disseminating messages of peace. Because I remember in one of the consultation in Bor, I was together with one committee member from the GPAA, and when she stood up to speak about the responses of the consultation that were carried out in Lufangole, the community members or the participants who were there were really interested to hear what the communities of Murle are saying towards the idea of the intercommunal boarding school, which was very positive. So when she said that, the community of Lulkwamale or the community of Murle have already pledged that they are going to contribute this amount of resources, it encouraged the participant right there that, okay, so this is an idea that even our counterparts, the Murles, are also agreeing to it. So we also need to, to do our best to also contribute to its success. So this is something that I found encouraging during the consultations, that communities are willing to come together and finance it, and so that the children can go to school together, and being a step to realize a lasting peace.
Just coming back to Minigano and David for a second, seeing this in the wider peace process, this is in a way one of the most specific sort of standalone projects that we've taken time to get behind, create a process around, and so forth. There's livelihoods, obviously, off the back of some of the dialogues and so forth. But of all the different things that could be done, we could have decided to try and set up a hospital somewhere, or there are all sorts of things the communities ask for. As you look at the wider process, Minigano and David, why do you see this as a worthwhile priority to sort of take an elevated status, if you like, in our in what we're investing some time and energy from the POF side to get behind with communities?
I can come in. I think there are definitely. I think our process of engaging the three communities has moved beyond just searching for relative peace. I think we've looked at trying to explore some of the peace dividends, and we have seen the introduction of the livelihoods where young the cattle camp armed youth are engaged directly through the livelihood activities, either is the cattle trading or farming, the peace farms that have been established and all that. But I think what makes this more significant and worthwhile pushing for it is there has never been one particular activity, or call it a project, that could bring the three communities together. I think this is, if this goes ahead and we are able to manage to raise the resources that are needed for it, I think it will be one of those very unique sort of venture that the three communities work on it together. It doesn't mean that when they are schooling together, the kids are schooling or the school is running. Doesn't mean that the issues that they are dealing with will go away. Actually, I believe some of those issues will continue. But the fact that they would be able to point to something more tangible, to point to something that there is a school that we have actually achieved together as the three communities, different communities, I think that will continue to give them hope. And the stories that these kids, when they come back to their families during the school holidays, I believe there are sort of around the fires experiences that will be shared by these children together that we hope can influence the broader perspective and starting to change the narratives that we've had to, or we have seen between the three communities. So I think there's quite a lot into this, and I really hope that we, when I say we, those who are facilitating the process, but together with the communities, the three communities, and any other well-wishers, I think this is one of those projects that I think once you really push it further and go, it will be quite great. And if I can finish by quoting the Jonglei, we have the Greater Bore area coordinator during the time that we were talking about the inception of the intercommunal boarding school. He said this, and I can paraphrase that this is the only thing, this is the only take-home package for us. For us, he meant for those who are involved in this process for such a long time. He felt that this is a tangible thing that I think that is encouraging him to continue, so that when wherever we stop, this is one thing we can look back and say, look at what has, as a result of our engagement together, look at what has come out. So
yeah, I also want to say, when you look at the intercommunal boarding school idea, it's one of these things that is more focused on the future. It's a lot more future oriented, because we're not really targeting something that can address the issues now. But then even when POF is not there, when Peace Canal is not there, when the different projects that we are running in these areas are not there, if the school is established, it can still continue beyond us, beyond the project. And also, we're talking about communities or areas in the borders that completely have no services, like schools. In some of these areas, you can drive for hours. There's no single schools. So I think this brings in a very unique opportunity to all these communities to be able to access these basic services that can also guarantee a better future for the generation to come. But also, when I think about the idea of this school in relation to the nation as a whole, and how the education system used to be in the Sudan in the past. We've had stories of generation from the SPLM who would say, oh, I am from Yei, for example, but I went to Rumbek. My father studied in Rumbek, for example. So this level of educational exchange, it creates something in people. So I believe testing this with these three communities, when the students go back to their communities, they will not be the same. They will not think the same, especially with regards to their neighbors. Despite the fact that bad things are happening, they will have a very different way of thinking. And I think this system of education that we have used in the past, where you have students studying in different regions within the country, maybe this is the beginning of bringing it back as a way of building tolerance within young people and the next generation, and also building awareness and knowledge of the diversity of these countries, the diversity of our communities and our tribes. So, and that's why I feel like it's a very special program in a way.
Yeah, and to that point, I think in our podcast with the Peace Canal area coordinators a couple of weeks ago, I think a couple of them, when we asked about their initial kind of exposure or formative experiences around peace, they spoke of growing up with people from different communities and or going to school with people from different communities, just to reinforce that point. Well, this all sounds great. So let's look at some of the challenges as well. Stephen, there seems to be a lot of energy around the idea, a willingness to engage and to keep the momentum going. At the same time, what gets in the way of this, or what are the things that still need to be addressed so that this can continue to move forward and come to fruition?
Well, thank you. First off, maybe before I go to the challenges, I think it is important to mention that currently the status of the school has not yet been decided by the three communities. So it's either we are going to have a primary school or a secondary school, but then the consultations will decide, because as we consult, we are also voting on the status of the school. Right. Yeah. So well, on the challenges, I think one of them is the lack of resources at the moment. These two areas are very vast, GPA and Jonglei, and there are a lot of communities that lives in different parts. So so far we have only conducted 4 awareness in two counties. That is one Lekwangole and one in Bor. The 2 consultations that we conducted earlier were, this is where we brought all the key stakeholders, but then we also need to we need to go to all the counties as it was recommended in the consultation with the key stakeholders. So we need to go to Duf, we need to go to Gumru, we need to go to Apobo, UI, Nirol. So and resources at the moment. So at the moment it's something that is lacking. And then at the same time, being a rainy season, even if we had the resources, some of these areas it will be difficult for us to access because of the conditions of the roads, and some places do not have good airstrips where planes can land during the rainy season. Then there's the third, maybe in some places like the northern Jonglei, the greater Akobo part, we are still experiencing political conflicts, which will be challenging for us if they continue to hold consultations in those areas. Oh.
And if I may add to something that I see as a challenge, and I think it somehow came through in the several ICJ's discussions about the intercommunal boarding school, because it took the communities quite a long time before they could agree that, okay, let this school be a place in Guardian, for example. That's the location that all of them have agreed for the school to be located. It took them time. So what I see also clearly, in as much as there is support, wide support, there's also a little bit of fear among the communities on what it means to send their children into those schools. And I think these are things that with time, the consultations that Stephen is doing, the consultation and the awareness and a lot of community engagement will help build that trust and confidence to within the communities to eventually really believe that they can be able to send their children to Guardian, to school. A Murle woman can be able to send their child to Guardian, and a Nuer can be able to send their child to Guardian, trusting that nothing will happen to them. So it's a challenge in a way, but it's also a challenge for us to see how we can really walk through this with the communities to fully embrace that idea.
So in terms of mobilizing resources, this seems to be a key issue. Stephen, as you have the conversations, and if we think about not only the donors we always think about here in South Sudan, foreign missions and so forth, but also diaspora, who would have family in Jonglei and GPAA, and at the end of the day, at least to begin with, this is only going to be a small number of students who can benefit directly from this opportunity. What would you hone in on as if you were making the case, as it were, to people who might consider supporting this, that that it's really worth it, and that it's something worth prioritizing for those who might have some resources to contribute to such an initiative?
I think the objective of the Inter-Communal Boarding School is to bring peace to the 3 conflicting communities. And so far from the consultations that we've had with the 3 communities, is it has come out clearly that this is a project that they are willing to achieve, and one demonstration is that they have already pledged their resources, their local resources, sand, chicken, goats, cows, and even a sack of charcoal. But then we know that these contributions from the community members might not be enough to construct, a big boarding school, and that it will need support from other,
You've just muted yourself, Stephen.
Yes, from other well-wishers. So in this regard, I think if I was one of the well-wishers out there listening to to what the communities are saying, and you are also someone who wants to support peaceful coexistence between communities, and communities have already demonstrated, it's unlikely, because in the past, when you call the communities together and say, especially when you are an organization, and say that we want to implement this project, most of the time they'll say, you have the resources, you can go ahead and do it. But in this case, now the communities are willing to, contribute what they have, and then say, okay, please, can you help us? We already have this small thing, So I believe that, and also trust that if there's a well-wish out there who might want to support, then because of this demonstration from the communities, then it will be worth it.
Rob, I think just if maybe I could add to that, we basically now working on a document that can outline clearly, or let's say mobilization strategy, that can clearly outline whether it's an individual or agencies and wherever, sort of how they can support. So that could come, that will come soon. But I think I wanted to perhaps, for many times, because I am also part of the diaspora, and for many times, we, the diaspora, South Sudanese diaspora, we play some sort of very negative and positive way in the conflict that has been taking place in Jonglei-GPAA. And we've backed it up in all sorts of ways. And I think a lot of complaint or a lot of concerns that are being raised by the diaspora in the past is that they don't know who to work with, And so it's very viable and it's quite easy for them to support their own communities during the conflict, or when there is an issue, for example, when there is a flood or things like that. But I think what the Inter-Communal Boarding School puts out there, it's actually presenting itself for those who would like to perhaps support peace, able to put their resources towards that, and they are able to, there is a process on how they can do that, and there is a process where they can actually monitor the progress of what is happening. We want it to be very transparent, and I think I want to speak directly to the diaspora, wherever that is, in Canada, America, UK, Kenya, Egypt, Uganda. I know these are all the communities that are living in the diaspora, and I think if you are from that part of the community, or you are outside that community, and you feel inspired that this particular project would be able to bring the 3 communities together, I think there will be ways on how we can share more information on how you can support. But I think it's a very unique project that I think we would hope that people will be able to jump onto it and support.
And I just also want to add that on the fundraising, the funding landscape has changed a lot all over the world. And we're not only looking at the diaspora, the international funding, but also private sector. I think there's an opportunity for the private sector to contribute to something that can bring peace. And also with peace, it brings opportunities for businesses. So I think private sector is one of the areas that we're calling on to support, but we also need to lean on towards more and more.
So there's all the potential is there, and if enough people can get behind it, it can continue in this process and be realized in due course. Maybe just as we wrap up, to take it in a slightly different direction with final reflections, I want to ask you all, what's one thing that you remember from your experience of school that you would hope some of these students, when it comes about, could experience as well, whether it be academically, socially, recreationally, environmentally?
I remember when I started my school back in Ethiopia, as one of those the Lost Boys, that we call them, the Jesh Amer. I remember we started off under a tree, and I vividly remember sitting there and very excited. I actually thought that a wall around me, the excitement of seeing a teacher with the chalk and a blackboard, it was quite incredible. That excitement is one thing that I'm hoping for the first students or first peoples that will go to this school, whether we manage to build it with the concrete walls or we ask them to sit under the tree. I think that is a great memory that I feel like they would be able to carry forward, and I will want to share.
I think for me, the playtime was usually the fun time. But when I think of school, especially my primary school, our school was it was a Catholic school. It was very diverse to a point. It's only when I started working that I got to know that, oh, this person is from this community. We never really cared about where people are from. In the school environment, we were just students. We were just, well, Sudanese by then in my primary years. So it's only recently that I got to figure out, oh, this one is from this place. So I really hope for the Inter-Communal Boarding School, the students will see themselves as students, as South Sudanese, before seeing themselves as all the other things. Of course, it's important for them to identify with all the other identifiers, but first, let them be students willing to learn from each other and from the teachers.
For me, I will say is the relationships that we forge during school time, when when you're playing together, doing your homework together, and in most cases when you come together, there are relationships that are developing, and even up to today, those you have been in for those that have been in school with, some of them I still love. I still have their contacts, and we still talk to each other. So demonstrating the relationships that we've created during our days in schools.
Great. Well, hopefully all of that can be part of the equation and much more besides. Minigano, you said the playtime. It's a bit like when we're adults and we go to conferences and people say the best parts are the coffee breaks, not the actual and speaks to Stephen, that social element. We think of it as an academic or educational thing, but it's as much social formation as well. Thank you all very much again. This is an exciting initiative with a ... to be continued at the end of it, and we'll continue to give updates through the website and hopefully in due course with another podcast to see where it has all got to. So thanks particularly, Stephen, for joining us today from Boer, and Minigano and David as always, and we will be back again soon.